As the Trump administration rolled out sweeping changes, it found itself embroiled in a series of high-stakes legal battles that could redefine the boundaries of presidential power. From controversial travel bans to environmental policy rollbacks, these cases traversed constitutional frameworks and triggered debates that might affect governance for generations. The stakes couldn't be higher, as courts grapple with unprecedented challenges, setting the stage for a legal showdown that demands attention. Welcome to Court Decoded. Today we delve into the high-stakes legal battles faced by the Trump administration. These challenges unraveled across courtrooms nationwide, raising critical questions about executive power, civil liberties, and the judicial system's role. Each case could potentially reshape American governance, setting precedents that could influence future administrations. Let us explore what these landmark cases mean for democracy. The Trump administration's travel ban, officially known as Executive Order 13769, was one of the earliest and most publicized actions that ignited a firestorm of legal challenges. Implemented in January 2017, the order restricted entry into the United States for citizens from several predominantly Muslim countries. Critics quickly labeled it a Muslim ban, arguing it was unconstitutional as it discriminated based on religion. The legal battles commenced almost immediately, with multiple federal courts issuing injunctions to halt its enforcement. Legal arguments were grounded in the First Amendment concerning religious discrimination and the Fifth Amendment, ensuring due process. Importantly, these cases tested how much deference courts give to presidential determinations on national security, an area traditionally afforded significant latitude. Over months of intense litigation, the cases progressed through lower courts, culminating in a June 2018 Supreme Court decision upholding a revised version of the ban. The court's decision, while criticized by some as acquiescing to executive overreach, asserted that the president has broad authority to regulate immigration for national security purposes. These rulings underscored the tension between national security and civil liberties, fundamental elements that continue to influence debates on executive power. The Trump administration's approach to environmental regulation also stirred significant legal controversy. A notable instance was the rollback of the Clean Power Plan, an Obama-era initiative aimed at reducing carbon emissions from power plants. The administration argued that such regulations were burdensome for businesses and exceeded federal authority. Thus began a prolonged legal battle over the balance of power between federal and state government in enforcing environmental regulations. At the heart of the dispute were interpretations of the Clean Air Act, a federal law intended to control air pollution on a national level. States and environmental groups rallied against the rollback, filing lawsuits asserting that the administration's reinterpretation neglected legal obligations to protect the environment and public health. These disputes highlighted the judiciary's crucial role in interpreting statutory frameworks, influencing how future administrations might shape environmental policy. Ultimately, the resolution of these cases would impact not just environmental law, but also principles like judicial deference to administrative agencies and the scope of executive power in the regulatory arena. The Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals (DACA) program became another contentious legal battleground. Initially implemented in 2012 under the Obama administration, DACA provided temporary protection from deportation to undocumented immigrants brought to the United States as children. In 2017, the Trump administration announced plans to rescind the program, prompting immediate legal challenges. Opponents argued that rescinding DACA violated both administrative procedure laws and the rights of its recipients. The central legal question was whether the administration had provided a sufficient rationale for ending the program, as required by the Administrative Procedure Act, which governs how federal administrative agencies may propose and establish regulations. The battle reached the Supreme Court in 2019. The court ultimately ruled in June 2020 that the administration's attempt to end DACA was arbitrary and capricious, and thus unlawful under the Administrative Procedure Act. This case became a pivotal point in administrative law, emphasizing the importance of the procedural steps required to alter or rescind major governmental policies. It highlighted the essential legal principle that agencies must adequately justify their policy changes, ensuring that administrative actions cannot be executed without clear, rational explanations. A clash over the 2020 US Census revealed another arena of fierce legal challenges. The Trump administration's proposal to include a citizenship question in the census was met with extensive opposition. Critics feared it would lead to an undercount by discouraging immigrant participation, thereby affecting congressional representation and federal funding allocation. Several states and civil rights groups swiftly filed lawsuits, asserting that the question discriminated against non-citizen communities and violated statutory and constitutional mandates. The cases hinged on principles found in the Enumeration Clause of the Constitution and the Administrative Procedure Act, which demands that administrative decisions be based on a rational foundation. In a landmark June 2019 decision, the Supreme Court blocked the inclusion of the citizenship question, characterizing the administration's rationale as contrived. The ruling delivered a critical reminder of the judiciary's power to challenge executive actions that fail to adhere to administrative law procedures. Moreover, it reinforced the notion that decision-making processes must be transparent and genuinely aimed at serving the public interest, not merely political objectives. In May 2017, the Trump administration formed a Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity, provoking widespread legal scrutiny. Established ostensibly to investigate voter fraud, critics viewed the commission as a vehicle for voter suppression. The commission faced numerous lawsuits from states and civil rights organizations challenging its methods and transparency. Legally, these cases questioned compliance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act, which demands federal advisory committees operate with transparency, accountability, and public accessibility. Plaintiffs argued the commission was bypassing these requirements, keeping its proceedings opaque. Faced with mounting legal pressures and challenges in accessing voter data from states, the administration disbanded the commission in January 2018. This legal episode underscored the importance of transparency in government operations, the protection of electoral processes, and the judiciary's role in upholding statutory requirements. It highlighted the broader implications of how legal challenges can effectively question and curb areas of potential governmental overreach or malpractice. The fallout from these legal actions emphasized the heavily scrutinized nature of electoral integrity and the safeguards that must be preserved within democratic systems. The Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits the receipt of gifts or benefits from foreign states without congressional consent, became a focal point of legal contention during Trump's presidency. This obscure provision received unprecedented attention, with allegations that the president was benefiting from foreign patronage at his businesses. Lawsuits were filed, arguing that such arrangements potentially violated the Constitution. The legal battles revolved around interpreting the clause, determining the extent to which personal business benefits constituted emoluments, and the standing of plaintiffs to pursue these claims. Courts were thrust into uncharted territory, tasked with grappling complex constitutional questions with far-reaching implications for executive ethics. Eventually, in January 2021, the Supreme Court dismissed the cases as moot, as Trump was leaving office, but the issues raised remain a watershed moment in constitutional law discourse. This episode spotlighted the enduring tension between private interests and public service, elevating ethical considerations to the forefront of modern presidential conduct debates. The pledge to build a wall along the US-Mexico border was a hallmark of Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. However, when congressional funding for the wall stalled, the Trump administration declared a national emergency in February 2019, directing military funds toward its construction. This unprecedented use of military funds for domestic projects faced immediate legal pushback. Lawsuits were filed by states and environmental groups, arguing such reallocation of funds was unlawful and exceeded executive authority under the National Emergencies Act. This legislation, which grants the president special powers during crises, became a subject of intense debate over its constitutional limits. federal courts reviewed whether a national emergency declaration validly applied in this context, and the separation of powers doctrine, examining whether the executive was overstepping its bounds against congressional budgeting prerogatives. These cases traveled through several courts, with rulings diverging on statutory interpretations and constitutional questions. The legal discourse highlighted potential flaws in emergency powers oversight, emphasizing the need for clear guidelines to prevent executive overreach under the guise of emergency declarations. In July 2017, President Trump announced via social media a ban on transgender individuals serving in the military, reversing an Obama-era policy. This abrupt policy shift provoked immediate legal challenges. Plaintiffs argued that the ban violated the equal protection component of the Fifth Amendment's Due Process Clause and disregarded procedural safeguards under the Administrative Procedure Act. The courts were tasked with navigating the balance between military policy discretion and individual constitutional rights. As the lawsuits progressed, several federal judges issued injunctions blocking the ban's enforcement, stating the policy lacked justification and was discriminatory. Legal analyses focused on whether the policy was motivated by genuine military concerns or constituted unconstitutional discrimination. After extensive litigation, the Supreme Court allowed the policy to proceed pending further proceedings, though it dealt a blow to efforts affirming transgender rights within the military. This case underscored ongoing tensions in civil rights litigation, the scrutiny imposed on presidential authority over military affairs, and the evolving interpretation of equal protection under the law. The legal challenges presented during the Trump administration reflect a broader narrative of conflict between executive action and judicial oversight. In numerous instances, the judiciary emerged as a critical check against perceived overreach, with courts either halting or modifying executive actions deemed constitutionally or procedurally questionable. While a few decisions favored executive authority, the majority underscored the limits enshrined in law. These cases embody a dialogue on the separation of powers, where each branch endeavors to maintain its role within the constraints of the Constitution. The outcomes of these litigations have broader implications for the rule of law in America, particularly concerning how future administrations may wield or be checked in their exercise of executive power. They also highlight the judiciary's indispensable role in preserving democratic principles through rigorous examination and enforcement of constitutional and statutory standards. This ongoing examination of executive action continues to shape an evolving landscape of governance, laws, and the intrinsic rights they aim to protect. Thanks for joining Court Decoded in exploring the Trump administration's legal battles. These cases highlight the judiciary's significant role in preserving democracy and limiting executive power. Don't forget to subscribe for more insightful analyses, like the video to support, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay informed, and remember, the law is a living entity we all shape.